vary. Sometimes they don't want to sign unless it feels like an actual priority for them. And others are like, well, it's not something we don't believe in, so sure.
Yeah. Yeah, someone that told
Yeah.
me youth hostel, YHA came back today, but sadly too late.
Yeah, that's
but,
a shame.
Yeah.
But we'll know for next time we're doing a kind of joint sector letter.
Yeah, and a couple of people have said keep in touch, like someone from Bristol Medical Department, Bristol Uni, sorry, Medical Department,
Okay.
said they couldn't sign in time, but keep in touch to try
Driving tests, yes, non-specific.
We're going to start.
Oh, right. 3 minutes of nonsense.
Okay.
All right, I'll leave early.
Right.
In touch with stuff.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah, yeah,
You got the brief. You got
No,
the sentence to say this. Email. About an hour ago.
Oh, well, I've been
okay.
to walk.
Yeah. Can you pick it up? Okay.
Sorry.
No, don't worry. Do you want to just move that out of the way? Because that seems to be quite prominent.
Opening remarks. So, hello, everybody.
Okay, we haven't started.
So we haven't started.
So we're going to start. Okay, so I'm going to start to just let people. Okay. Just give people a few. Actually, I think they must have changed it. People can come in already. Okay. I'll just give it 1 sec. Yeah.
Ready to go? Right. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to this all-party parliamentary group for cycling and walking meeting on the Cycling and Walking Investment Strategy number 3, or CWIS3. Jeeves. And my name is Fabian Hamilton. I'm chair of the all-party parliamentary group. We've got a number of excellent speakers this afternoon. So without further ado, I will ask Sarah McGonigal from Cycling UK to introduce us.
Thanks, Fabian.
Just give me 1 sec.
Wait for my slides to come up.
Yes. Where's that? Sorry.
Rhonda.
Rhonda. What in Wales?
No.
Who's this? Good.
Shall I kick off?
No, just give me 1 sec. So. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Great. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah McGonigal, Director of External Affairs at Cycling UK. I've been at the organisation for about 2.5 years. Before that, I had similar roles in the environment sector and the construction sector. And this is my first time speaking at the APPG, so that's really nice. Thanks for asking, Adam. I've attended a lot of these meetings, but it's the first time I've actually spoken at one. And in case anyone is not familiar with Cycling UK, we are the national cycling charity. Next slide, please, Adam. We have 70,000 members across the UK. We were established in 1878, so we are nearly 150 years old. And we are most well known for our campaigning work, but also our award-winning programme work, much of which is government funded. In England, that includes our flagship Big Bike Revival programme, which is funded by AT and helps people rediscover the joy of cycling. Next slide. So I'm here with 2 hats on today. I'm representing Cycling UK, but I also wanted to speak to some broader kind of walking and cycling alliance points, fondly known as WACA. So we were supposed to have Tanya from Living Streets on the panel today, but she hasn't been able to join us because she has sickly children. So I'll try and cover the broader points that our coalition are keen to make. So yeah, we're a coalition of 8 organisations, kind of the big names in the active travel sector, walking, wheeling and cycling more broadly, all the kind of main NGOs and not-for-profits. We work really closely together and we do try and speak with one voice wherever possible. And one of those moments is sort of CWIS3, so the Cycling and Walking Investment Strategy. We wanted to come together and put together a joint response because it is such an important moment for us as a sector. And I think it's fair to say we think there's lots of room for improvement, which I'll be talking you through today. And yeah, our policy colleagues across WACA have been doing a lot of great work on this, and the joint response is coming along nicely, which I'll kind of share some of today. And it'd be great just to kind of put this to test with the APPG and get any feedback from the parliamentarians that are here today as well. So next slide. So I'll be covering today a bit on the vision, objectives and KPIs, a few words on the local transport authority performance monitoring, ATE's role, and more broadly then why targets matter, and some examples of when we think targets have been used well by other sectors and other policy areas, and then a little glimmer of hope at the end. So next slide, please. Starting with the vision. Well, I suppose more broadly, just wanted to kind of make the point that CWIS3 does feel like a bit of a correlation of CWIS 1 and 2. We're pretty disappointed. It does feel like a bit of a skeleton. Usually you'd hope that these sorts of strategic documents would build on each other. Each iteration would be stronger than the last, but that doesn't feel like that's happened in this case. So we do see lots of opportunities to strengthen it and make it really meaningful, which I think is important. So starting with the vision, so it's great to have a vision, it's great to set out your ambition, but a broad point here is that we don't think that the 2035 timescale is really achievable. We haven't settled yet on what we think would be an alternative date for that. We're kind of discussing that across WACA at the moment. But there's no point having a date in there for the government to just fail. We don't think that it will be possible for walking, wheeling and cycling to be a safe, easy and accessible option for everyone within 10 years. So we do want to see that timescale made more realistic so that we can make sure that people genuinely respect this document and buy into it. I think that's really important for all of us that work in the sector and local government and so on. More positively, we are really pleased that the word everyone's being used here. That is really important and indeed accessible. But we don't think that those terms are reflected enough in other parts of CWIS3. So for example, we don't really see them in the objectives or the KPIs. And it is really important that those different sections of CWIS talk to each other. So I guess just to summarise then, we want to see the date move. We're going to kind of come up with a suggestion and a rationale for what that could be. And then that does need to be underpinned with clear measurable outputs and outcomes up to 2030, which is what this document covers. So that would be the kind of ideal approach from WACA's perspective. So moving on to the objectives. So these are the two objectives that the government has set out in CWIS3. Ensure people are safe to travel actively and ensure people feel it is an easy option. So starting with the first one, we don't really feel that safe is well enough defined. What does the government mean by safe here? And does it include perceptions of safety, which prevent many people from cycling and walking and wheeling, particularly women cycling actually. So we do think perceptions of safety should be included here, not just actual safety. And as a quick aside, at Cycling UK, we're running a big kind of flagship campaign at the moment of women's safety called My Ride, Our Right. And our latest research shows that 9 in 10 women feel afraid to cycle in towns and cities. Women in particular are put off by cycling because of a perception of a lack of safety. And that does need to change if women are to have equal access to cycling, you could say, and enjoy all the kind of health and well-being benefits that come from time on a bike. So we'd like to see that change to that first one, something around being safe and feeling confident. I think that would be much stronger. And then the second one on easy choice, we think that needs to include something about it being an accessible choice as well, not just easy. That's really, really important. I mentioned that earlier, that it needs to kind of speak to the vision, and that's not currently the case. We'd also like to add something on motivation that's not really covered here. So there's no objective about increasing people's desire to walk, wheel or cycle. And that definitely needs to be included as well. And I guess just more broadly, it just doesn't really feel like the wording here showing as much leadership from government as we might hope. It does feel a bit passive and less bold and less visionary than CWIS1 and CWIS2 in that respect. So moving on, these are the government's KPIs that have been set in the past. So I won't read all of these, but obviously we do think that CWIS does need to have clear KPIs, and these sorts of things are useful to measure, but what's completely lacking is any kind of ambition within any of these. So if this was in a campaign plan, you wouldn't just describe what you wanted to do, but like what the target was as well. So other transport modes operate with predictable 5-year cycles and transparent progress reporting. Active travel should have something similar, that level of maturity. So on ambition, there are, areas here that we would like to see measured, but they just don't have those measurements in there yet. So not sure why that is, but we do think that's really important in order to make this document as meaningful as possible. And again, it's something we saw in CWIS 1 and 2, we're not seeing yet in CWIS 3. And RE, the fifth one, decrease percentage of people walking / cycling concerned about safety. We actually think that decreasing the percentage of people who don't walk, wheel or cycle because they are concerned about safety would be even better. That might be something for the government to consider in terms of strengthening this. Moving on to local transport authority performance monitoring. I won't go through every metric here, but I did want to just kind of bring your attention to something that we think is missing that's really important. Because it's not all about putting new infrastructure in place, it's also about kind of maintaining the existing infrastructure we have and making sure that people want to keep using it. That's also really, really important. So we would like to see something added there that isn't there already. And that should help ensure that people that are walking, wheeling and cycling can continue to do so. And there's no reason for them to be put off. It's still widely used, that infrastructure. And then on Active Travel England and their role, again, there are a few performance indicators here. Could maybe just move to the next slide, Adam. Thank you. That we think could be strengthened. One includes an indicator around the number of people engaged via programs like bikeability. Again, that's really good to include, but we think it would be even better if it was focusing on actively engaging people from the most deprived areas and the least likely to be kind of engaging in active travel at the moment, because they are the ones that stand to benefit from it the most. So it would be a way of making sure that that is as meaningful as possible and having a really good impact. I'd also like to include a suggestion here for one to add for ATE, something that we think could be helpful in terms of how ATE operates and continues to kind of improve how it works with local authorities, but something on measuring satisfaction levels from the kind of local combined authority developer level. That might help ATE kind of hone its approach in future and make sure its guidance is as well received as possible. So a few suggestions there on the ATE stuff. So that's kind of some of the meaty feedback that's coming from Cycling UK and the Walking and Cycling Alliance. We could just move on to the next one. Thanks, Adam. I just wanted to say a bit more about why targets matter. They do provide really important kind of long-term clarity that's needed to unlock progress. They give confidence to sectors that the government will need to partner with to make these targets achievable, make them a reality. They give confidence to local leaders as well, and that's why it's really key that we include them. And I just wanted to next slide, please, Adam, nod to a couple of areas where I've noticed targets working well. So yeah, I was previously in the construction sector for many years, and if you ask anyone working in house building how they felt about targets, they'd be quite likely to tell you that they were very supportive, even if the government doesn't quite reach the lofty aims that the target might set. It does help give confidence to developers. So at the moment, the government is aiming to deliver 1.5 million homes by the end of the Parliament. It might not get there, but I would suggest that it will get a lot closer by striving for that target than it might have done otherwise, and what that does in terms of corralling everyone around the target. And likewise, in the environment sector, my previous job at CPRE, the Countryside Charity, the environment sector, I think, does make good use of targets. Some of them are legally binding, some are not. In 2023, we managed to successfully persuade DEFRA to set a hedgerow lane target for the first time. And that was really well received by farmers and other stakeholders that are there to kind of make that target a reality. So just a few examples to give us inspiration as to why these sorts of targets matter. And then finally, we just noticed an exchange in the House last week. Hopefully this message is landing with the government. So in response to a question from a Lib Dem peer, Baroness Kramer, to Lord Hendy, the Transport Minister, he did say that he would expect targets to be included in the consultation or the next iteration of the actual document, for all the reasons Baroness Kramer suggested in terms of why they're useful. So I hope that they will be listening closely to the Walking and Cycling Alliance and taking on board our feedback. But yeah, happy to discuss further. And back to you, Fabian.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah McMonagall from Cycling UK. Very good presentation and introduction to us. I apologise that what I should have said at the beginning, and you more or less said this anyway, was that the Cycling Walking Investment Strategy CWIS was initially launched by the DFT in 2017 and was supposed to bring focus, long-term investment and planning in line with roads and rail, but this has not been achieved so far. Now, the third CWIS, as you rightly said, is out for consultation. The proposed objectives, as you pointed out so clearly, Sarah, do not contain measurable targets, as we know. The consultation document fails to mention that England is way off target for half of journeys to be walked and cycled by 2030. So the aim of this meeting is to explore CWIS3 with the options the government could adopt to build on previous strategies, which have kindly done. Our next speaker is Xavier Bryce from the Walk, Wheel and Cycle Trust, formerly known as Sustrans. Xavier and I have known each other quite a long time. They're doing a fantastic job, even though they've changed their name. We're going to let Xavier explain exactly what his trust believes should now be done. I'm just going to make an apology because in 5 minutes I have to leave to chair another meeting, but our wonderful Vice Chair, Ollie Butler, arrived bang on time and he'll be taking over from me.
Not quite bang on time.
Well, bang on time to take over.
For the benefit without.
Great.
Xavier.
Thank you very much, Fabian. So I'll start. You mentioned we used to be called Sustrans, so I put this here just in case you wondered what the Walk, Wheel, Cycle Trust was. We used to be Sustrans. If you could click, Adam,
It's
click,
not working on
go.
Just one sec, just working.
No, they're not.
I'm really disappointed you're no longer Sussex. Because I supported you for such a long time.
Indeed. Look, indeed. Sorry. All I can say is that you're not the intended audience. Change. And many people are. And I mean that in the nicest possible way, because
Put up with it.
because we have lots of people who know us, but the vast majority of people don't know us or haven't heard of us.
It's all right, I'm sort of joking. Just not bring up-
Yeah, no, it's a serious point. Serious point. So yeah. Technical issues.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Okay, is this the slide you want, or do you want to go?
Is it working now?
Yeah.
We good? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So for the transition sort of, it seems to stop mid-transition actually. You sure it's working?
This is transition.
I don't know if that's a joke or not.
No, seriously. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh,
there we are.
oh, yeah.
There we are. It seems, yeah,
It's
more
working
technical
here.
problems maybe. So do you want to try clicking again? Does it go on to the next slide? Is it frozen?
Yeah, no, it's working on here. It's working on there. It's not working on here.
Goodness, we have 3 screens going. Do
No, it's not. No, okay.
you want to maybe stop sharing and start again? Would that do it?
Right. That's
Should we just try? Back to the rondo, yeah. Yeah. Must be the height of summer. Yeah.
Have we not been paper?
no.
What? I've been to the wrong event. Oh, well, not so a little bit different. It's good. Sort of Andalusius, halfway between, Granada and, Algeciras. I'm just saying, can't fly today.
Let's try. Not happy.
Yeah, yeah, good, okay, so we see that, click again,
Yeah, it's working now.
click again, is it gonna go all the way?
Oh.
Yeah, there we are, so we are now the Walkwell Cycle Trust.
That's what it was. It was the transition. It was it fooled the computer.
Okay, so maybe the screen in here also takes offence at our new name, but so we are the Walkwell Cycle Trust. We are, it says on the tin. We've been around not as long as Cycling UK has been as CTC, but getting on for 50 years. And we've now got a strategy that in ambition takes us out to 2050. We've got a new strapline because people-powered movement changes everything. We've got 3 strategic goals. The first of those is build a UK-wide walking, wheeling, cycling network, which I'll come back to. The second is connecting neighbourhoods, and the third is empowering millions. I'm not going to say too much else about our new strategy and what we do, but it's online. It's a great, clear document, but I would say that. But actually, I'm not here representing the Walkwell Cycle Trust. I'm here to talk about a letter that was that has been written to the Secretary of State about CWIS3, and that was published yesterday afternoon in the Guardian. It's running in the Guardian today. And it's a public letter. How many signatures do we have, Laura?
More than 50.
More than 50, over 50 signatures. This 50 is going to keep coming back as a recurring theme. So over 50 signatures. So go on to the next slide. Thank you. So that's the article that was in the Guardian on the right there, written by Peter Walker, appeared yesterday afternoon. And as it said, more than 50 groups connected to transport and public health are urging Heidi Alexander to set specific targets and more actually for walking, wheeling and cycling in England. There's a list of all the signatories there. It includes the National Trust, it includes the Faculty of Public Health, it includes the Transport Planning Society, and of course a lot of active travel organisations, the Walking Cycling Alliance members and others, and other health organisations. And what I'd like to talk about is what our broad issue is with CWIS3 as it is. And I'll go back and cover some of the ground that Sarah touched on there. And then what we would like to see change. So with that, and just before going on, just to say Laura Laker's here, and Laura's been a driving force in this, and I just want to acknowledge that. So also I'm Transfer Fusion Media. So thank you to Laura and Adam for their immense work on this. Really appreciated. So Adam, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. So that's it. That's the CWIS. It was introduced by Fabian earlier and Sarah. So CWIS3. Yeah, sorry, sound like sequels, don't they? CWIS3. This time it's serious. Only it's not, which is the issue. So that takes us to the next slide. So it was mentioned. So CWIS3 is supposed to put. It came in the 2015 Infrastructure Act. And I'm going back to this not because I'm a policy wonk, because I'm really not. But just to explain a little about why it matters, because it really matters. So, so up there on the screen, you've got the Draft Road Investment Strategy 3, wonderfully known as RIS3, which is operating in sync with CWIS3, and it is in sync, 5-year terms. And then on the left-hand side, you've got what is known as HLOS, the High-Level Output Specification. And despite the fact it says 2005 in big numbers, that actually relates to the current control period on rail, which is 2024 to 2029. Yeah, and that control period, Network Rail writes a business plan, and that business plan is a response to 2 things: the HLOS and the government's SOFA, which is a statement of funds available. Yeah, you're not believing that, not a policy wonk, but there you go. So this bit here, the HLOS, the High-Level Output Specification, I just want to dwell on that. It's not called high-level outcome specification. How many people do we want, what mode share do we want for rail? What percentage of people do we want to say they like rail? It's hard output. It's a high-level output specification that government holds Network Rail to account with the help of the ORR, and that all changes under rail reform, and it's GBR and rest, but fundamentally this will change and evolve, be built upon, where government says this is what we want to see. It's a high level output specification. And this is a critical point I'm going to come back to. But the overall point is that both of these are about the money, the many, many billions that is going to be put into road and rail. And the idea of CWIS is it's done. And that takes me on to the next slide. So at the top there, it says sort of in a nutshell what our position is. So there's a laudable ambition, but it is not realistic and it lacks rigor and teeth to deliver it. So you've seen that vision before, and it's hard to disagree with that. I think we would all want walking, wheeling and cycling to be a safe, easy and accessible option for everyone. And then it talks about the benefits that we all know about, but that they're repeating. The issue with that is utterly unachievable by 2035. And therefore, is the document serious? Because if you're serious about that, then you need to put either a serious ambition, a realistic ambition to go with the 2035, or you need to change to 2035. And in the letter, actually, we do say 2050. I said we'll come back to 50. And we say 2050, which is 25 years away. Feels like an awful long time away to get there. But if you look where London's got to after 20 years of unprecedented investment and effort, I was involved, I led the first cycling walking strategy in London in 2006-7, or 2007 rather. Then, you know, it's taken London 20 years. We're talking about the whole of England. 2050 is absolutely ambitious, and 2035 is frankly completely practical. So I think the first point is, let's be serious about this. But part of the issue is, if you don't have actual, you know, really hard targets and things you can measure against and things you can really, really hold deliverers to account for, then it doesn't really matter. And that takes me on to the next slide, which sets out sort of our two beefs. So the first is long-term, realistic and measurable milestones and targets. And I've started talking about that. And the second, and this takes us back to output rather than outcome, which is a personal bugbear of mine, an ambitious plan for a national network of networks. Yeah. So I'm going to start with A, on a national delivery. So a long-term, realistic and measurable milestone and targets. So first, a comprehensive vision to 2050 with clear measurable outputs and outcomes to 2030. And the reason for 2050 is it's got to be realistic. But you also want to set something that you're not then changing every 5 years. You're saying this is what we're working towards. So let's work towards 2050. But we need outputs and outcomes to 2030 because legally that's all this document can actually be held be used for. Secondly, by 2030, 50% of short journeys should be walked, wheeled or cycled in urban areas. That is the existing CWIS2 target. It is difficult to measure, but frankly, all outcome targets are difficult to measure. So why lose that ambition? It's the right ambition. Sorry, to say 55%, not 50%, my mistake, that's a typo. 55% of short journeys in towns and cities. We are considerably under that at the moment. But we'd like to see that metric of short journeys in towns and cities walked, wheeled or cycled kept. And then third, for 2030, an ambitious target to reduce the number of pedestrians and cyclists killed or seriously injured. So currently it talks about reducing the rate at which people are killed and seriously injured by motor traffic. We'd like to see that. We'd like to see an actual specific target. And as Sarah said, there is, you know, we feel that government has been clear that it really does want input on this consultation. All consultations want input, but in particular, it's looking to understand, you know, how do we make this stronger. So we're hoping that these suggestions and asks are going to fall on fertile ground. So that's A, the long-term, realistic, measurable milestones and targets. So the second one, B. So if you could fast forward it. So basically, it's these three things added together, made coherent, and then stick some teeth around actually delivering it. So the three things, there are three boxes here. The yellow box is the National Cycle Network, as the Walk, Wheel, Cycle Trust would like to see it in 2050. This is not a fine-grained network that provides all those local links. It's a national network across the whole of the UK, the only UK-wide transport network, covers Northern Ireland as well as Scotland, England, Wales. Currently 13,000 miles. What you see there is our plan to deliver a 20,000 mile network by 2050. We don't deliver ourselves, we do some, but we work predominantly with others. We're funded by government to do that. In fact, we've got funding for this year from government here in England, which we're very appreciative of, funding in Scotland as well. We deliver that with partners, local authorities, people like Canal River Trust, National Trust and others. And we've been working to improve that ever since our review of the network about 7-8 years ago. So we would like to see that grow, of course. But what we're actually calling for, we as Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, but Walking Cycling Alliance, those 50 plus organisations that were on the letter, is not just that. We would like to see a network of networks. Because at the moment, there is no coherency to our walking cycling networks, unlike the road network in the UK. Same signs, same road classifications, really easy to use. And the plan for the motorway network, the strategic road network, forms the backbone of the road investment strategy. It's an output. It's a physical thing you can see and point to and count how many miles have been delivered. On the right-hand side, what needs to be added to it is first the pledge made in July by England's mayors, who pledged a national walking, wheeling and cycling network backed by government. To the best of my knowledge, that doesn't exist on paper anywhere. It's not actually drawn out. It's again, a laudable ambition. It's really good to see. It's devolution in action, but there's no plan to deliver it as such, and there's no plan for it to be an actual joined up network. So the third element is another acronym, LCWIPs, Local Cycling or Walking Infrastructure Plans, started in April 2017, back when there wasn't much desire to put a lot of money into walking cycling, but a recognition that money would one day come, and therefore local authorities, strategic authorities have developed these local cycling and walking infrastructure plans. But they're just plans on paper, they're not actual networks. But you've now got cities and towns starting to build out their networks. And in theory, everyone should be building them to the same standard. But as a user, they don't make sense. And for the government in England, it is hard to hold anyone to account for what is being delivered. So the idea here is to actually have an output that you can say, this is what we want to see, and here's when we want to see it. On to the next and final slide. So first, what is this national network of networks? So first one. So it brings together those networks, but it's a plan developed and agreed by the end of this Parliament. So by 2030 at the latest, we want to see that plan on a page so you can point to it and say, here's the network. Second thing, it would then be delivered by 2050. So back to what's realistic. Now, a lot of that network is out there already. Now, as Laura pointed out, the National Cycle Network is not perfect, far from perfect, but there were some really good bits. And there's a lot of good stuff now being built here in London, of course, but also in Manchester, in Bradford, in Sheffield, in Leicester. I could go on. There's lots of strategic authorities and local authorities now getting grips to this and building discrete networks. We'd like to see it add up into something bigger, because this network of networks is not something that government then takes control of. It is delivered through devolved investment, devolved power, devolved authorities, but ultimately the money largely coming from government or governments. And there'll be some national schemes as there are now, but there need to be clear milestones, clear targets to go with that. And then you can hold everyone to account for delivering that through to 2050. Next bullet. So where does this network go? We actually don't know is the rather simple answer. We've got some plans, we know what that looks like for the National Cycle Network. There are existing networks elsewhere. But what this network needs to do is connect key trip attractors and settlements. That includes public transport interchanges, obviously railway stations, bus and tram stops, ports, airports, also hospitals and primary care sites. So at the moment, 3.5% of traffic on England's roads is caused by the NHS fundamentally. 3.5%. That is quite a lot of traffic. Now, not all of those journeys could be walked, wheeled, or cycled, of course, but a large number of them could be. But for that to happen, our surgeries, our hospitals need to be easy, safe, accessible, and that's a question of the infrastructure being there. And then schools and leisure destinations as well. So this is what the network needs to deliver, if you like. But just to dwell on that, why a network? Why are we calling for a network? Well, the experience of Northern Europe, the experience here in London shows that fundamentally that is what you need for people to walk, wheel, or cycle. It's got to be practical, safe, and possible to do it. You can have all the outcome measurements you want about encouraging people to do it. But if you're not providing the infrastructure to do that, how can you expect people to do it? And also, government can't actually force people to go and change their behaviour and do something. But it can hold others to account for delivering something on the ground, like it does with rail, like it does for road. Why should it be any different for active travel? Outcomes really matter, that's why we do it. But the thing you can hold people to account for, and I would argue the way that most people think, is an output. I don't go out to buy something to keep my food and drinks at 5 degrees Celsius. I go out to buy a fridge, an output. Yeah. People think in outputs, I would argue. This is an output. It's clear, you can point to it, you know what it is, and critically, you can count and see how much has been delivered, you can cost it, and you can deliver it through to 2050. Next bullet, please. The other point is, it's a future proofing. So we need to ensure that our new housing, the new towns, and all major infrastructure projects are connected up with this output, this network as well, and that it provides safe access to green and blue space. And then the last bullet point, most critically, the network of networks needs to be world-class, barrier-free, and fully accessible, built to the LTM 120 and inclusive mobility. This is a walking, cycling, and wheeling network. It needs to be fully accessible, no barriers. It needs to be, to go back to that vision, it needs to make it possible for everyone to walk with, to choose to walk with and cycle for short journeys. So we're calling for this to be the centrepiece of the CWIS3, if you like, something that can then be tracked and plotted through to 2050 with the plan developed by 2030. The last slide is just having talked about policy and targets and dates and network. To go on to the last slide, Adam, it just shows us what we're all doing this for fundamentally, which is that we want to see more of that, don't we? It's easy to forget. That's why we're here. It goes back to the pitch you started with, Sarah. I think that's what we all want to see. But in order for that to be possible, the infrastructure needs to be there. There is money going in. We're not surprising. It might be surprising if the letter doesn't call for more money. There's lots of money out there. It's now making sure it's spent well and that we get something at the end of it that really does achieve that vision.
Well, thank you very much, Abia, and thank you very much, Sarah. Now I've got some time, about 20.5 minutes for question and answer discussion. Are there people online, Adam, or just
There are people online.
Okay.
I've got a question, but not first ask in the room.
Yes, boss. Sebs, have a question.
Well, I have a question to Sarah about women feeling not safe to cycle. And what can you be a little bit more granular about it? What is it? Why women particularly do not feel safe to cycle? Is that the general thing that women don't feel safe to walk through a park because it's dark, or is it around that they think they can't? Is it a physical barrier? What is it?
And as well as your answer, remind me to fire Adam dig out slides that we did. So we did a session on that one. Was that about 4-6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Exactly that topic. But
Exactly, and my colleague Sophie did an excellent presentation at that session for the APBG, so I can certainly share.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. But yeah, it's everything you suggest and more. So very much those kind of barriers about personal safety, but also about physical infrastructure. Women will be much likely to prefer to have separate cycle lanes and make sure that they are kind of away from the traffic. They also really value routes that aren't necessarily there currently. So the infrastructure we do have in cities like London and Manchester is often concentrated on kind of like commuter routes. There's much less likely to be routes that might take you to schools or shops, routes that women might be more likely to be taking on a sort of daily basis. So yeah, it's quite a mixed picture, but there's lots of different reasons, and it's kind of
But hang on, I mean, I'm getting increasingly frustrated about gendering these things. For example, that women are the ones who take kids to school. I mean, fathers do that more and more.
They do.
Why would men not also have the same concerns about sort of being sharing? I find it quite difficult to get this now. I mean, I'm 65, fair enough, and I lived in a much more gendered world. But I look at my children who are parents now. they share a lot of things.
Yeah,
A woman needs to get to work too. She needs a computer. So why would women still respond in this way? That sort of bothers me. Is it about what you look like on your bike or what you wear on your bike? Is it because I feel bullied I cycle in London and I feel sort of bullied by the what I call the peloton. Yeah. So you stop at the traffic light and boom, everybody in lycra is sort of trying to get to the front. And yes, fair enough, there seems to be more a male attitude. So is that what it is? I just think if we want to really break down that barrier, then we need to go really into the nitty-gritty of why it is that women feel less safe than men to cycle. Because a bicycle itself is not a heavy piece of equipment. If you learn to cycle,
unless it's an e-bike, then it is.
Fair enough. And my e-bike is of course designed for men. So my e-bike is a massive thing that I ride in Bath, and I find it much more difficult to handle. But fair enough. There are enough bicycles that are different sizes for women, and to for example balance a bicycle, that shouldn't be a physical barrier.
No.
So how can we get to the bottom?
Right. Sarah, I think there's a question.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, there are definitely many more men that might do the daily drop off to school and the nursery and so on, but there's still lots of evidence to suggest that women are more likely to be doing that. So we're going in the right direction, but we're not there yet. And one of our sort of taglines from our My Ride Our Right campaign is that if you make cycling safe for women, you make cycling safe for everyone. And lots of men are still put off by cycling because of a fear of being unsafe. So yes, we have very clear, very recent evidence that it is a bigger problem for women than it is for men. When 9 out of 10 women don't feel safe to cycle in cities and towns, it's much, much higher than it is for men. But we're hoping to move it in the right direction if we get that right infrastructure in place. So yes, it's quite a mixed picture, and there's lots of different elements to look at it through.
Can I just one follow-up question in terms of not the commuter route, but sort of slightly smaller routes? I mean, I'm talking about Sustrans or the Walk, Wheel and Cycle Trust now. I've been campaigning for safer cycling routes for over 20 years in this country. And we in Rochdale, we were part of Connect 2 and all the rest of it. And we came across this sort of thing that in other countries, you would signpost small off the main road things. So it wouldn't cost local authorities a lot of money. They would just say to so-and-so, and you go around the sort of small residential routes rather than sticking on the main routes. Has that ever been explored as an opportunity for local authorities in a cheaper way of having more cycle routes?
Yeah, I think so it has, and it has its benefits at times, but it can also be a really unfortunate compromise. So in London, that was sort of the approach in London, because it was rather than spend any money, let's create the London cycling network. And when you went into traffic counts on the London cycling network, which took all the residential routes, it was still full of parked cars and not the safest necessarily. They were quieter. The majority of people were going down the main roads. And so that led to a rethink around the strategy in London. And there's something about needing to provide the sort of the infrastructure that people need, going back to segregation, traffic calming. So to send people down residential roads where they are direct, where they are still, low traffic, low speeds, that makes sense. But often that's not the case, and you end up with triple junctions on them too. So it's a mix of different things you need. But yeah, if there were easy options like that, I think many of them would have been done by now.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a thought to that, I mean, that's part of the idea of quiet ways in London.
Yeah.
So the problem, I mean, they're all very nice if you're quickly about the leisure, not really trying to get anywhere. But if you're trying to get anywhere, then so it depends. So they're useful for different markets, and the Netherlands is really good at this stuff. They have the red and white signs which show you the most direct route to places, but they also have the numbered knotepunkt thing where you can set your own sort of leisure route. So it's a bit of a mixture. Right, Adam, other questions? Who anyone else on the road?
Well, just the issue of is it trip chaining? So some analysis I've seen in Manchester is very straight 5 later from the suburbs into the city centre, but it is a gentle thing. Women take part in far more complex journeys to shops and leisure. All our primary schools, but when male politicians go into primary schools, we know the vast majority of people work there, from the dinner service to the teachers, and people dropping off our mothers. So that's just as critically important as building a big straight commuter belt stuff. It's important.
Massive.
I mean, I hate to cite a personal example, but my wife transferred from Manchester Victoria to Manchester Piccadilly a few months ago on a Brompton bike. It was happened 3 times.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just so sticking with the women's cycling topic from a few weeks ago, it's a major issue, and I think the point the answer in London isn't a load of cycle superhighways, more cycle superhighways. Interestingly, where London's gone is to bring the quiet ways, the cycle superhighways together into the cycle network, the cycle routes. And they serve different journeys, different purposes. But going back to the side road example, the quiet ways did require engineering intervention and investment in order to make them work. And they are quiet factories, but now collectively they form cycle routes. And I absolutely agree, Mike. We need, as Sarah was saying, we need to serve those local journeys that not just women make, but in those examples you talked about, many more women than men, but that is changing. But fundamentally, it's not just work trips, it's trips to the shops, it's trips to see friends, it's trips with children, all of those things. As Chris Whitty calls it, the humble journey. It's those humble journeys that need to be served.
Everyday normal life.
And those fine-grained journeys, if you like, and going back to the ask for a network. So you need a fine-grained local network, you need your sort of your more regional network, and then you need your sort of more artery routes. And you need those different levels. But at the moment, we've got no way of talking about that, of describing it, signing it, telling people what to expect. Everyone's doing it a little bit differently, which is not the case for roads, which is why we'd like to see a national network of networks that includes really clear classification of different route types, available on your phone on Google Maps, on a physical map for those that use that, so that people can get around really easily and of course signed on the street. But at the moment, every town and city.
Yeah, if at all.
If at all.
Yes, quite right.
That feels like a really big opportunity now. Say, no, actually, we're going to do this properly because we're going to treat it like rail or road. We're going to make it consistent everywhere, but delivered locally.
Adam, how many hands have we got online?
We've got a few.
Okay, so in which case, I'm going to issue a plea. The more concise the questions are, the more we'll be able to get everyone in the next 10 minutes. So with that caveat having been issued, over to you, Adam. Choose away.
So the first question is from Tom Bogdanovich of the London Cycling Campaign. He says, the words selected by the CWIS3 vision are safe, easy and accessible if they choose. What are the implications of this word choice? The vision says easy, not attractive or inviting, let alone aspirational or status and life enhancing as conveyed in most motor car advertisements. If the new target is just an unspecified increase, then London, which now accounts for some 60% of cycle trips in England, may deliver that target. Surely we need to be bolder and more ambitious for the country as a whole.
Yes. Next question. Should we go to the next question?
Yeah. Okay. Mark Strong is a transport consultant based in Brighton. Combined strategic authorities are going to be established across England. CWIS3 ignores these new bodies, but they will have a huge role. How can they be brought fully into the process?
Question.
Well, one of the things that the Walking and Cycling Alliance has been discussing as we've kind of come together for our joint response is a lot more clarity about which bits of CWIS3 sit with central government and which bits sit with combined authorities or indeed lower tiers of local government. And that's really not clear at all. So I think it's an astute point and it needs to be addressed in the actual iteration of CWIS3 that we end up with in the end.
Put every mayor on a bike and see what it is like.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good idea.
I go back to, it's a good question. I go back to the National Audit Office report a couple of years ago into the FT's spend since the CWIS was introduced, where it said that basically he didn't know whether the money had been spent well or even spent at all on walking and cycling. And so with the amount of sums being devolved now to strategic authorities on integrated transport settlements and their subsequent funding, it's really important that the decisions need to be made locally, that's clear. They do need to add up into, in the case of walking, cycling and wheeling, what CWIS is saying the government wants. And that's very hard to hold anyone to account for an outcome. There are so many different factors. So go back to, if you have a network of networks, you have a plan by 2030, you can then work out who needs to deliver what in order to achieve that England-wide network by 2050. And there's your answer for how you hold people to account. It's not just about the network, the infrastructure, there's other things, but 70 to 80% of the money needs to go into infrastructure. And we need to work together, getting the best of devolved independent decision making, the local knowledge delivery, but adding up into something bigger. I think that'd be my answer.
Do you want to come in on that, Sarah?
No, nothing to add.
Question from Ali Atai, who is as Kingston Borough, I think. It's really, you did talk about sort of funding, actually. I mean, his question is, how can we ensure there are clear targets or funding to maintain the cycle network as they're implemented? I just wonder whether you wanted to come back on the sort of funding.
Maintain the cycle.
It does actually say to maintain the cycle. Yeah. Do you want to talk about, because you did say quite categorically, that's it, that this is not about funding. This is about sort of using the money wisely. Is there anything you want to come back
Yeah,
on?
well, so it's not about funding in that we're not saying there needs to be X billion pounds more going into walking, cycling and wheeling every year. Now, of course, as Walking Cycling Alliance, I'm sure we'd like to see more investment in cycling, it's always nice, but that's not the ask. But to come back to the question of maintenance, at the moment, maintenance is given out to local authorities and strategic authorities using a formula based on miles of road length. Yeah. And that is supposed then to go to pavements and roads, fix potholes, the rest for maintenance. There is absolutely nothing in there that takes into account cycleways. Yeah, it's all driven off the road network. And to go back to this network of networks idea and what it's trying to do, if you've got an agreed national network on a map, classified, then that can then drive how you then would give out maintenance funding. So I'm not in a position to say, here's how much money it will cost. But at the moment, there's no real mechanism because the data isn't there. There's no reliable data around where the network is because there's no definition of what the network is, aside from the national cycle network, which is not the same as the fine-grained network that goes into towns and cities, and that so much of the devolved money is now going into rightly investing in. So I think the answer, at the risk of sounding like a stuck record, is the network is the answer for starting to define what it is you need to maintain, and therefore who should get how much to maintain, which is the challenge at the moment.
And maybe I could just add to that as well. So running up to the kind of CSR and budget and everything else, we have been kind of calling for 10% of the transport budget to be dedicated to walking, wheeling and cycling. We know what we've got now and it is much less than that, but because we have been a little bit critical of CWIS3 today, I thought I would just maybe pay the government a compliment here as well. At least we do now have the promise of kind of 3-year funding settlements, and they are so important. Like, obviously we would like the funding to be higher than it is, but having that certainty is very, very key to kind of the success of all of this, including delivering value for money for the taxpayer. But for local authorities now, they should be able to plan properly and really make this money go as far as possible. So that is a big step in the right direction, and kind of credit where credit's due.
Okay, I'm conscious of time. Does anyone object if we go on for an extra 5 minutes? We have the room booked, so it's Ollie as chair. Are you okay for an extra 5 minutes?
I'm very content with that, should you and the rest of the room.
Okay, let's crack on then. So this is from Steve Rose, Intelligent Health, and he has a project called Beat the Street. I'm not going to try to describe what it does, but it's an interesting project to encourage people to walk and cycle and wheel. Do the presenters have any views on the importance of aiding the transition for children to independent mobility? I mean, he goes on about when we find that when children get increased independence, they if they don't feel safe, their well-being is reduced. If they feel safe, it isn't. So it's really about, I guess it's really about feeling safe and helping their transition. So
You guys do much more with children than we do.
Yeah, I guess so that transition point, especially from sort of primary school to secondary school, is really important. So first of all, we know that there's often a drop off in cycling levels in particular among some people at that age. And that is, we also know that over the years, and there's a famous study done in Sheffield many years ago that compared the world that children have, the world they can access by themselves without their parents, and it's shrunk down to something like a sort of an average of 350-metre radius around their home, as opposed to being sort of a 6-mile radius. So children's horizons and worlds have literally shrunk, even though we've become more mobile as a society. It is all generally car-based, so it's a real issue. I think that, again, I come back to the infrastructure point, and so a network of networks provide safe routes to school, but not just to school, going back to sort of in the same way it's not just work for adults, it can't just be just a school for children. It needs to access green space, leisure activities, and connect up to where they want to go, shops and friends' houses as well. There's a whole raft of other stuff that children need, but fundamentally they need a safe environment. And they need to feel safe as well as their parents needing to feel safely.
okay, this is a question from Anna Lewis. I don't know who Anna Lewis is, but the question is, where do you see the role of shared bikes in CWIS3? Do you think they could help meet targets for a proportion of short journeys cycled by, bypassing the barriers of needing to own a bike and store it at each end?
Well, I mean, if only CWIS3 was this detailed, but yeah, it's not really at the moment to give any indication of where the government's going on that target specifically. I mean, I've recently moved to Waltham Forest, and I have to say I was quite dismayed when I found out that there were no opportunities to rent shared bikes there at all. And I know there are good reasons for that, and I intend to have that conversation with Clive Noakes at some point about what we might do in the future. But as someone that doesn't own a car and now was occasionally relying on things like Zipcar, which is now kind of like also leaving the space, it's really, really hard. So yes, like Cycling UK at a kind of organisational level, we are supportive of shared e-bikes. We know they have their challenges as well, but they are, when you look at the kind of demographics of the people using them, you can see the potential, and it is opening up cycling to a much broader audience. And it's how we kind of capture those people and help them encourage to carry on doing it their whole lives, and obviously operating in a kind of considerate manner as well.
I'd say that if you look at where shared bikes have been most successful, it's where the infrastructure is there and exists. So there was an article in The Economist a month or so ago talking about how line bikes revolutionised London and how amazing it is. But that's been made possible by consistent investment in the cycling network in London, where people now who otherwise wouldn't feel safe enough to get on an e-bike will get on an e-bike and use it. And I think shared bikes and e-bikes, electric bikes in particular, because it is fun. We forget fun matters, and it is really easy. And it's less effort. So shared e-bikes, absolutely. I would say second order to getting the infrastructure in place, but absolutely vital. And again, the market responds. When you get the infrastructure in place, the market will come in and people will pay to own it.
Okay, William Bird. Again, I think he's from Intelligent Health, but I might be wrong. He is. He's chairing a group that is to make. I'm chairing a group that is to make the West Midlands Combined Authority an outdoor region, capital O, capital R, on behalf of the Mayor's Health Equity Group. Walking, cycling and wheeling is an essential part. So what added value can the Mayor offer to local authorities? Question mark.
Pass. I'm not sure we've got any. No.
I think one of the things that mayors do is provide leadership, clearly, but it really matters. So I think that mayors providing leadership and not only saying this is something they want, but then delivering on it and being consistent because going back to what Bill was saying about getting those on bikes so that they sort of, you know, cycle the talk, if you like, or walk the talk and walk around. I think doing that is really important. So visible leadership is absolutely vital. And then coming back to sort of the shared bike example, I think a borough by borough scheme that's happened in London around cycle hire and shared bikes doesn't really work because people don't live by borough boundaries. So I think that there's a need to connect this up. And then again, I'll come back to the network, like a stuck record. There needs to be a network that covers the whole of West Midlands. It's got to serve local trips within local authorities, but there needs to go out far bigger, needs to serve green and blue spaces, and it needs to connect up beyond the West Midlands boundaries as well, into East Midlands and beyond.
Okay, this is Benjamin Smith from the Bikeability Trust. We agree with the need for targets which are smart. What are the panel's views on combining or separating targets for different modes of active travel and what they could be? And then he does go on and say the word safe is used. What are the panel's views on changing this to, it's a separate question actually. The word safe is used. What are the panel's views on changing this to confident, which emphasizes empowerment rather than risk?
Well,
So there's two separate questions there.
I'm happy to start with the second bit of that question. So yeah, as we were saying earlier, kind of thrashing out our joint response with the Walking and Cycling Alliance at the moment includes Bikeability Trust. And where we've arrived at is that it's important to ensure that this CWIS3 has a target around actual safety, but also perceived safety. And we are suggesting the word confident or confidence is inserted there, because I think that is really important in terms of making sure that we are increasing people's motivations to cycle. And then in terms of the beginning bit of that question around different modes, I think that more detail in CWIS3 along those lines would be helpful. And at the moment, it's incredibly vague. Being a bit more granular on breaking it down by type of journey and type of mode would be helpful, for sure.
Okay, last question is from Chris Dixon, who's from a group called Just Ride the Bike. Public fear about road safety can often focus on commercial fleet vehicles, vans, HGV, buses. Beyond waiting for infrastructure, what opportunities could exist for fleet operators to participate in making streets safer? Is there a way we can get businesses leading and contributing financially towards safety standards?
So I think that's, you know, one of the advantages of working with fleet operators is you can have a scaled up impact because fleets of vehicles and drivers on the road. So I think there's opportunities to work. This is, I know it's been done in London and I'm sure elsewhere in the country as well, working with bus companies on driver training for buses. There's a freight operator recognition scheme here in London that's been going for some time now, which is also linked to things like the vehicle safety as well as the driver safety. So ensuring that, for example, tipper lorries have good visibility all round rather than the way most people don't. So I think there are schemes like that can certainly be done, and that can because it's not just the infrastructure. There'll always be points where you need to come into contact with traffic. There can be many points, and so there's something about how you change behaviour for sure. But I think there are industry bodies to be worked with, that can be worked with, and are being worked with, but there's definitely an opportunity to do more.
We're done.
Well, lovely. Well, thank you so much, Xavier and Sarah. Thank you for everybody for coming, and some great questions. Yes, much to think about in terms of how we make CWIS3 something of substance rather than more British state blancmange.
Our next meeting.
Oh yeah.
So our next meeting will be in January. Date to be confirmed, but likely to be on the road safety strategy, which may be imminently released. So watch this space. Thank you very much.